This week on Painting Lines.
Sinner's level just isn't the same on grass.
He wrote on the camera lens, I'm back. And then he loses first match here in Holland.
Musetti, is he going to take that next step up?
Ready?
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we kicked off the grass season with Diallo winning his first ATP title in 's-Hertogenbosch and Fritz winning his first title of the year in Stuttgart. And this week we have a pretty fun episode, I think, on the docket. First, we're going to talk about the big 500s that happened last week at Queen's Club and Halle. And then we're going to do a little mid-year review and revisit some of our predictions from episode 87, which we made at the end of last year in December, where we kind of looked forward to 2025 and previewed what we thought was going to happen. And so we are just going to check in on that about halfway through the year so far. Just a couple of updates for you guys before we jump into it. We just ordered some merch samples, so hopefully we'll be able to take a look at those and maybe have those available for you in the next couple weeks. We also just recently launched a Patreon account where we're still kind of setting it up, but we have a few ideas in the works for what we would like to do to hopefully build a Painting Lines community and get some more interactions with you guys. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to like and subscribe and just let us know if you're enjoying it.
Thanks for that intro, Aiden. All right, guys, I'm going to toot my own horn here just because last Monday I said that Bublik was going to be a dark horse that was going to make a deep run here in Halle. But I'll be honest, I didn't actually see him winning the title. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Aiden, let me ask you this, though. So we definitely both favored Alcaraz to win Queens, but we weren't going to be shocked if he lost just because of that Roland Garros hangover and kind of his tendency to be a bit inconsistent. So I want to ask you this. Like, what do you think this means for Sinner? Because he lost, what, second round to Bublik? And I'm wondering, like, do you think this result changes how you view, how deep he's going to go in Wimbledon?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because when you made that prediction last week for Bublik, I was like, okay, I can see it. And then in the second round, they matched up with Sinner Bublik, and I was like, well, that kind of screws over Eric's prediction, right? Because I wasn't thinking, oh, he has to beat Sinner to make a deep run. And then I was like, okay, so he's going to be out in round two. That kind of doesn't look good for Eric's prediction, but it also doesn't really matter because he had to play Sinner. And then he beats Sinner. It's all of a sudden like, oh, this guy could make a deep run and just beat the number one guy in the world. I mean, this was an upset I don't think anybody saw coming. But in terms of what it means for Wimbledon, it honestly didn't change my perspective that much because I think this match was much more of a positive for Bublik and like showed that a lot of people are underrating his actual talent, especially on grass, than it was as a negative for Sinner. Because obviously Bublik is a two-time champion now in Halle. We know that he is a very solid player on grass, and we know he has that talent level that's never been disputed that Bublik isn't a talented player. It's just whether he is maybe fully locked in his matches. I think also when you look at the past, Sinner's only recent loss to Medvedev came at Wimbledon last year. And with how dominant Sinner has been over Medvedev overall on like hard courts and such, I feel like it shows that Sinner's level just isn't quite the same as it is on hard court on grass. And then when you look at the other side of the argument, whereas Alcaraz compared to Sinner, Alcaraz is a two-time defending champion at Wimbledon. So I was always going to give him sort of the favorite of those two guys. And so I still would have been leaning that way, I think, no matter how they both did this week.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, the fun part about making these crazy bold predictions, if you do enough of them, eventually one's going to actually hit, one's going to turn out right. But yeah, very surprised, especially since Sinner manhandled him, a couple weeks ago at Roland Garros, like beat him in three. I think bageled him one of the sets too. So for me, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at this loss that Sinner had as kind of like he's still being impacted from his final at Roland Garros. Like the confidence may not be there. He's a little shaky. I'm kind of coming at it from a different angle than you. Like, sure, Bublik must, he played great. I'm not going to take that away from him. but I think it's also a little bit of Sinner just kind of having the yips from last time.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at who else Bublik beat, right? I mean, it wasn't the easiest run for him in the tournament. He still got it done.
Yeah, no, I mean, beating Sinner though, it's got to give you some kind of confidence. I feel like once he got over that hump, he was just, who cares if I lose? Because we talked about this before. He's essentially on borrowed time.
Yeah, I mean, what did I say a few weeks? It wasn't a few weeks ago. It was maybe a few months ago. But I remember I mentioned that Bublik or not Bublik, Sinner hadn't lost to an unseeded player since like Cincinnati of 2023 or something like that. I think he lost to like Dusan Lajovic or someone like that. But it hadn't happened in a very long time. So definitely credit to Bublik here.
Totally. All right. Well, let's get into Queens first. So Alcaraz wins this title. It's his second Queens title of his career and the fifth of the year. So he does it against Yuri Lehechka, which I want to talk about. This dude had a great freaking week. He took out Deminar in round one. Then he beat Diallo, who won for Bosch last week in round two. Then he beat Fernley in the quarters. Pretty solid grass player. Then he beat Draper in the semis in a tight three-setter, and then he played a very competitive three-setter against Alcaraz in the final. And in my opinion, that was a way more impressive run than Alcaraz, who didn't even face a player in the top 50, obviously until Lehechka in the finals.
Yeah, that's actually insane that he didn't play a guy in the top 50 in a tournament like this. But yeah, definitely a more impressive run, I'd say, overall from Lehechka there. And in the end, like Alcaraz, you didn't play a guy in the top 50, and then Lehechka isn't like a top 10 guy either. So a very nice setup for him this week.
Oh yeah, totally. All right, how about Halle? Let's kind of touch on that. So we just mentioned Bublik. He wins the title here. As you said, second one in Halle. He won it back in 2023, beat Medvedev in the final, which I think is an extreme positive sign for Medvedev because he has not won a title since 2023. I was looking at it, I'm like, sure enough, he's won like at least one in 24. No.
Yeah, I mean, I do question though. It's like there's that key word in there, title, right? So he's made finals in between that time, but he hasn't won a title. So this is just another close but no cigar, right? I feel like not making it over that last little hurdle, getting the actual trophy in your hand is kind of tough sometimes.
Yeah, at least he's trending in the right direction though, because I'm pretty sure he was dropping out of the top 10, which, he had held that spot for I want to say like 5 years.
Yeah, he's right on the edge there. He definitely dropped out of it, but now he's kind of hovering like somewhere
Mhm.
between 9 and 12.
Yeah, well, speaking of Medvedev, we got to see a Medvedev Zverev matchup in the semis here, which I love to see. These are always great, especially with their beef that they kind of have. But I was looking at their head to head, and it's super crazy. So Medvedev is up 13-7, but he's won the last 12 of 14 times they've played. So Zverev dominated him in the beginning when they started playing, and then it's just pretty much been all Medvedev from then on, with like a little bit of Zverev wins sprinkled in there.
Yeah, I mean, what's kind of funny is that like you look at 13-7, and that feels like a ton of matches, right? 20 matches, but you then think about the fact that these guys have been playing each other for like 10 years on the pro tour pretty much. So 20 times of them playing actually is maybe less than you would expect over the course of 10 years on the professional tour, especially with how good these guys are. I feel like the better you are, the more likely you are to see the same sort of guys over and over again. But it also is kind of funny because this is the opposite of Medvedev and Sinner, right? Where Medvedev had the massive lead and then Sinner's won what, 7 of the last 8 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, like what you said before about, the better you are, the more times you're going to play each other. Like it's good to see that they met in the semis because I feel like both, not so much as Zverev, but at least Medvedev, like we said, he's been struggling. Zverev, while not really, excelling and winning titles, he's still making deep runs in the tournament. So just kind of a little blast from the past seeing those two in the semis.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of funny because you look at, I remember when we had Sam Querrey on, he was talking about how he played, who was it, Kevin Anderson a bunch of times. And I think that's kind of the perfect example of a guy that you would see a lot when you're at that level where it's like, oh, if you're both in the teens or something like that, you're going to see each other in a bunch of like third round matches at slams or stuff like that, because you're not going to be the number 1 seed. And you're like, okay, I may eventually play the number 2 seed in the final, but we both have to win 7 matches or 6 matches to get there. But if you're both in the teens or you fall down out of maybe the top guys, you're way more likely to play a guy that's similarly ranked.
Yeah, that's hysterical. Something funny that I saw this week was Fritz. So last week when he won Stuttgart, he wrote on the camera lens, "I'm back." You know how they sign it, do their thing. And then he loses first match here in Halle to Mute. So just pretty ironic there.
Not really back.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, well, that about wraps up Queens and Halle. Aiden, I'm gonna let you take over from here and kind of explain the prediction analysis part of the episode.
Yeah. So I feel like it kind of is some predictions, but more just like we previewed the year, right? We talked about who was trending up, who was trending down, what the current status was. And so let's just kick it off with who we put as guys that were trending up at the end of the year. First up is Jack Draper, and I feel like we were completely spot on with this one. He's won a Masters 1000 title, got the finals in another, and breaks into the top 5 players in the world. I feel like there's not much more to say about this guy. He's definitely continuing that trend up.
Yeah, no, we nailed that. Good,
Yeah.
kudos to us. But do you think we would have seen top 5 player? We definitely said top 10. Top 5 is he may have exceeded expectations there.
Yeah, he probably did, because I feel like he was outside the top 10. He was in the teens somewhere, and it was like, okay, yeah, he'll be in the top 10 for sure next year. But top 5, I don't know if we gave him that much credit.
All right, who's next?
Well, next was Taylor Fritz, who he said was trending up. And
Oh,
at that point, the truth of the matter is he was trending up. But it does also feel as though he peaked right at the end of the year. Right when we were giving that prediction, it feels like that was his peak, because obviously like he made the finals of the ATP Tour finals, and then since then has kind of just dipped down and wasn't able to carry on the momentum. Actually, for 2025, he is only number 19 in the year-to-date rankings, and that's a boost, right? He obviously just won a 250, so that's was bumped him up there, but he's still number 19, like I said, the number 3 American. And interestingly, he does face Fonseca in Eastbourne, so that could be an interesting one to watch.
oh, dude, Fonseca always gets the toughest draws.
Yeah,
I feel like he always plays big names early on.
yeah, but that's scary for those big names too.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a tough draw for Fritz. I mean, I think he's got him here. I just don't think Fonseca has the experience on grass. Like you saw him last week, he was slipping all over. Slipped on
Yeah.
a key match, or I don't think it was match point, but a key point in the Kaboli match.
Well, I
Looks
may
like a little
disagree with
deer, a
you. I
baby
may
deer.
disagree with you later on, but
All right, well, let's see.
and then anyway, there were also some guys we felt like were kind of stagnating. In that episode, we commented that only one of the top 13 guys had actually changed between 2023 and 2024 in terms of the year-end rankings, and that was Hurkacz, because he had been injured. And in 2025, we've already seen some changes. Like there are already 4 new guys in the top 13 compared to the year end of 2024. And there's 5 if you go based on the year to date rankings. By the way, I'm only using 13 because it was the number I used last time for some reason. But
Oh, I thought
still,
it was your lucky number.
already seeing like half of the guys switched out essentially. So a lot of changes compared to almost none over the previous couple years.
I love it. I love how it's super fluid now. You know, it's kind of there's new eager people hungry trying to get up there and get their cake.
100%. And then obviously the flip side, we have guys that were trending down. And the first one is a guy where you talk about Djokovic, where there's a lot of uncertainty at that point in our predictions. And to be honest, if you look at Djokovic's year, he's played pretty well so far, but he just can't compete with Alcaraz and Sinner at his age. And so that puts him in a place where it's like, yes, he's very focused on the slams, and he's made the semifinal of the first 2 slams of the year, but he just hasn't been able to push it over the edge at those tournaments. Obviously, the first one had an injury, and then the second one just can't compete with that top player.
Yeah, I know. I mean, one title this year. But then again, like you said, he is focusing just on the slam. So I feel like this was kind of one that we didn't mean any disrespect whatsoever by him trending down. It's just kind of his natural progression of his
Yeah.
career.
It's more like just like getting older.
Yeah, exactly. Where we'd be kidding ourselves if we were like, oh yeah, he's gonna get even
Yeah.
better.
If
And
we said he's trending up.
yeah, no.
Yeah, he may have his best year to come. He's gonna win 8 Masters 1000s in a year.
Yeah, something about the 40, age
Exactly.
40.
Yeah, the 40th win.
Right.
And then Medvedev was another guy we mentioned in the trending down category, and that seems kind of accurate. Like we said, he kind of tumbled out of the top 10, is now hanging around right around that spot, and it just feels as though he's not the same guy that we saw a couple years ago. That was a huge slam threat. Now it's like you expect him to go out in maybe the round of 16 or so.
Yeah, I was hoping we put like freaking Nicholas Jowry on here because hindsight in 2020, dude, that man fell out.
100%. Yeah, I
And
mean, and then there's another group we talked about, which was the guys that have had kind of a slight fall from grace, and that was Tiafo, FAA, Rublev, and Runa. Honestly, when you talk about Tiafo, FAA, and Runa, they've kind of continued where they were. They struggle in a lot of tournaments, but then every once in a while they pull up and just have a great week. Like obviously Runa won in Barcelona. FAA had a great start to the year. Tiafoe's had a couple solid performances, but hasn't overall had an excellent year. Then you look at someone like Rublev, who has definitely fallen the most of these guys. Won Doha, but has really not been impressive anywhere else this year, I feel like.
yeah, Rublev definitely sticks out the most here to me on this list. When was it exactly that he started trending downwards? Like I don't even remember because I feel like it was such a quick change where he was a top five player making it to the quarters in slams, and now he's, barely getting any wins.
Yeah, I feel
Like
like
it
it
just
was
happened so fast.
he just stopped having as many breakout performances, right? Or not breakout, but like we saw over the last year or so, he would have a string of bad performances and then a couple good weeks, right? I feel like he just started having less and less of those brief periods of him being a great player.
Yeah, that one makes me the most sad because you could just see the pain he's going through on the court when he just has these temper tantrums. He always now when I watch him, he hits like the fake smash, like he'll like pump fake, like throw his racket on the ground but not
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. He's just like, I can't afford it anymore.
He's like, oh, let me not do
Yeah.
it.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, Tiafa, I gotta give him some more respect. To be honest, I feel like that run at Roland Garros, I definitely was pretty shocked by.
Yeah, crazy how like one run kind of changes things. Because other
Yeah,
than that, he maybe he Houston
yeah,
final,
yeah.
but
I feel like we're gonna look forward and just you gotta wait for August to see what he does then, right?
semifinal U.S. Open.
Yeah, exactly. Semifinal U.S. Open and maybe a big performance in Canada or Cincinnati.
Yeah, then we'll check back.
Exactly. And then there were a few guys we wanted to talk about that were anomalies. So first up, we have the Clay Rats, Tsitsipas and Rude. Uh, to me, Rude has doubled down on being the Clay Rat, right? I mean, he won his first Masters 1000 on clay, but was definitely a letdown at Roland Garros.
I
And then
pulled out of Wimbledon too.
he pulled out of Wimbledon.
Yeah,
Was
with
that
an
recent?
injury. Yeah, it was like yesterday.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen that. So, I mean,
Not like he was gonna go very far anyway,
yeah,
but
I mean, my feeling there is kind of he pulled out with an injury. It
right.
was I'm doing air quotes by the way for audio listeners. It's like, oh, I tweaked my ankle, so I just don't want to play in this tournament.
He's like, yeah, I need to work on my golf game, and when am I gonna do that? It's
Yeah,
grass
exactly.
season.
I mean, to be honest, if you look at how short the grass season is, right? If a player like Rude doesn't want to play in the grass season, he can essentially take like a month off right now and maybe train a little bit, but just do whatever he wants and have it be like a mid-year break.
Yeah, and there's no Masters 1000s on grass too, because remember he was really complaining about having to play in these Master Series tournaments because of the bonus, like how they cut it every time you miss one. So now he's probably really under no pressure to have to play these tournaments.
Yeah, but I mean, he does miss the bonus of playing in Wimbledon, right?
Yeah, 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 true. All right,
And then
continue on with the anomalies.
yeah, the other side, obviously, Tsitsipas has just kind of been bad this year, right? I mean, he's looking back on it. His clay season was not the easiest. He had 2 losses to Musetti and 2 losses to Fils, so didn't lose to bad guys. But when he got to Roland Garros, did have a letdown, lost to Gigante, and so that was pretty underwhelming there. But I did wanted to mention that because looking back, it's like yes, he lost relatively early in the other clay tournaments, but he didn't have the easiest draws.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think the Tsitsipas that we all know and at least I love the last few years, I don't think we'll see him again.
Yeah, he's
I
done. It
think
feels like
he's just kind of checked out.
yeah, 100%. And then Deminar is another guy we had in this anomalies category because he doesn't feel like he has taken that step up to be able to actually compete against an Alcaraz or a Sinner. He just is a solid player that beats most of the guys he's expected to. And it almost feels as though he's taken Rublev's spot where he's solid, but he's not spectacular.
Yeah, I think we nailed that prediction. I mean, he's pretty much lived up to it this season.
Yeah. And then another question we had was about Dimitrov. Just is there enough left in the tank? And it doesn't look like it. I mean, he's outside the top 30 in the 2025 year-to-date rankings. And I haven't seen anything that is a signal he's going to be able to rebound. It feels like he's almost in a slightly steeper Djokovic decline.
What do you mean, dude? He's breaking records this year. He's got 6 consecutive Grand Slam pullouts.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the record you want to be breaking, right?
I know that pretty much like speaks volumes to what we're saying. Like how we predicted him was just kind of someone that he has like breakouts, and he hasn't really had any breakouts this year.
Yeah. I mean, he played pretty good in Miami, right? But not crazy.
Yeah, I don't think he's the same player that you and I saw him play Rublev last year at the U.S. Open when he beat him.
Yeah. I mean, I
He's
feel
not
like just
the,
those injuries are just adding up, and every time he gets into the deep waters now, his body lets him down. But anyway, some other things we wanted to talk about are the guys we had as young guys to watch. So up first was a guy we've already mentioned, Fils. Honestly, has had some solid performances, but nothing that has made him stand out as like a top 10 guy, which is what we were kind of questioning. Like, is he going to take that next step up? Doesn't feel like he has. It feels like he's still on the cusp of it, but hasn't actually fully made it there yet.
yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think by this time next year, he'll be like pretty solid in the top 10.
Yeah, that's my question though, is like, are we going to keep saying that? Are we going to keep being like, oh, he's going to be there in the next year. Oh, he's going to be there in the next year. Is he just going to have to wait for other guys to kind of clear out and age out of being in the top 10 before he can take that step up?
Probably. And, kind of going off the Rude thing we mentioned earlier, he's also out of Wimbledon, which is unfortunate. He's got an injury. I think a back injury too.
That's not fun.
So he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah. And then another Frenchman that we were very excited about last year was Impesi Pericard. Has been our bet of the week a few times and has never paid off, it feels like. But he honestly hasn't looked great this year. I mean, he had a 6-match loss streak across 2 months earlier this year and had to go to challengers to break it up. So kind of exploded onto the scene last year and just has not lived up to that sort of explosive potential that we saw before.
Yeah, I feel like we just kind of gave into the hype there. Like he was cruising on. We were all super excited about him. Everyone was excited about him. And then, maybe I don't know if the pressure got to him or if he's just like you always like to say, regressing to the mean.
Yeah, I mean, another guy that we're about to talk about, João Fonseca, it's the same thing, hype train, but this one was legit, right? So with Impesi Pericard, it's like you kind of have to jump on the hype train because he's doing all these impressive performances, but then you see them kind of regress a little bit and you're like, okay, that's not actually where he is. Whereas Fonseca, who I want to get into now, has actually had some big wins, won a title in Buenos Aires, but he just needs to tighten up his game a little bit. I mean, his biggest win was obviously Rublev in Australia, but he's lost some matches because he just threw out way too many unforced errors.
Yeah, that Tommy Paul match comes immediately to my mind because he had so many opportunities. Like early breaks, even I think set points too, where he just could not convert.
Yeah.
And, the experienced Tommy got the best of him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his match even with Draper in Indian Wells, right? I mean, I didn't get to go in to watch that match. I was at the tournament, couldn't get into the stadium, but he hit so many unforced errors in that first set that you just can't win a match if you can't keep the ball on the court.
Yeah, still high hopes on him though.
100%. And then the last category of guys we want to talk about are the dangerous guys that were just outside the top 20. This was our last category in our predictions. And I've kind of grouped them into three groups now based on their performance in 2025, which is first up, some solid performances. So guys that have had great performances in sub tournaments, but also have been a little bit underperforming in other ones. Up first is Shelton, who I think is the best of this group. He has no titles, but has put together some solid performances overall and is currently actually ranked number 10 in the world. You have Mahach, who played well in the first couple months of the year and then kind of fell into a slump. So not terrible, but just didn't continue that momentum. You have Baez, who has kind of gone even more of just like, okay, he's just a great clay player and wasn't able to back up all the clay performances he had last year. So regressed a little bit. And then Lehechka also, we just talked about him earlier. He had a great start to the year and then kind of hit a slump. And from late February to mid-May went 1-7. So now he's kind of just starting to build back with his performance this week.
Out of all these guys, who are you the most bullish on, you think?
Bullish on like
Like
overall.
who's gonna, yeah, I guess perform the best.
I mean, it's hard not to say Shelton, right? I mean, he is an explosive game and he's actually already a top 10 guy. But I feel like if you look outside of him, it's Lehechka. I mean, Lehechka has an all surface ability in his game. Mahach and Baez, I feel like you see more out of them on clay.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Baez, we were given a lot of respect to. Like whenever we would see him, we would kind of favor him in these matchups too. So
Yeah. Then the second group of these guys is the guys that are just underwhelming, which is Korda and Poprin. They just haven't done that much this year. They haven't been absolutely abysmal, but they're just underperforming. They're not doing anything that really stands out as a great player that we were hoping for. And then the last group is the guys that have completely fallen off a cliff, aren't even in the top 100 for the year-to-date rankings, and that's Tabilo and Thompson.
wow, yeah, that's surprising. We thought Tabilo was going to be real dangerous.
Yeah, those two guys were definitely major disappointments because they had some great performances last year and just weren't able to replicate it this year. But before we move on, I do want to add one new category that we didn't have, obviously, in our preview, which is 6 months in. Who did we not mention that has stood out? So, who has been some of the best performers of 2025 that we didn't mention back at the end of last year? And my first one that comes to mind is obviously Musetti. No titles, but on clay this year was one of the best players in the world, has the second most ranking points out of any player on clay, and is probably had the third most impressive season on clay, right? I do put him behind Sinner still because Sinner came back and obviously made the final in Rome and then made the final in Roland Garros. But still incredible from Musetti. Made the final in Monte Carlo, made the semis in Madrid, made the semis in Rome, and then made the semis in Roland Garros as well.
Yeah, that was a crazy oversight. Where was he ranked back in
I
December?
think he was ranked
how
like
did we?
17. He wasn't super highly ranked at that point. His biggest performance had obviously been making the Madrid or the Wimbledon semis last year, but he didn't have as much hype as someone like Draper, and I think that's why we didn't have him on here.
Yeah, so he would have been in that category, like dangerous guys, like outside the top 15, outside top 20,
Yeah, I mean, I
something.
he probably would have been in trending upward. Maybe I don't know
Yeah,
where we would
okay.
have had him, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Second guy that we didn't have in our young guys, which we probably should have, is Mensick. I mean, overall, I think he's had a very solid year, collecting a couple wins at a few tournaments. And then, oh, yeah, he won in Miami, with wins over Draper, Fritz, Fees, and Djokovic. So that's really impressive. But I think even outside of that, has had a very good year where he has just been collecting wins at tournaments, like smaller tournaments, not the biggest tournaments, but just building up his ranking and sort of stabilizing it. So I think that when that Masters obviously ages out or whatever, is no longer contributing to his ranking, he will still be like solid in the top 25 or so.
Yeah, and what's crazy was he wasn't even going to play. He was going to pull out of that tournament. So just the fact that he stayed in there and got it done is huge. And we probably wouldn't be talking about him right now if he didn't win it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in terms of guys that we overlooked, it would have been like, okay, I mean, whatever. He's like number 30. He's not super overlooked. But the fact that he won that tournament makes him a guy we have to have on our radar.
For sure.
And then last guy is Cerundolo. So obviously we talked about Baez, but Cerundolo was a guy where we knew he was very solid on clay, but now this year made the quarterfinals at Indian Wells and in Miami. So you have to also give him some credit on a hard court. And I think also made some good performances on clay still. Like he didn't drop off on clay, but then again was a big letdown at Roland Garros. He was a big part of my my draw and kind of let me down big time.
Yes, he was. But his brother actually got a couple wins.
Yeah. So one of the Surroundalos did a good job.
Yeah.
But anyway, that about wraps up our recap of the preview, I guess. So you ready to hop into segments here, Eric?
Yep, let's do it.
Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code PAINTINGLINES, that's one word, for 20% off store-wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
So I came across an ad on X. It was a post for a Holger Rune smashed racket for sale. And the description was hilarious. It was like match used, emotion fueled, one of a kind. And then it went into Holger Rune smashed rackets are ultra rare collector's items used in official matches and only available in limited numbers. Why? Because Holger rarely lets his frustration take over. But when he does, the moment and the racket tells a story. Now you can own a raw piece of that intensity for only $7,052.
Okay. Two things here. First up, why 52? Why 7,052? I don't understand. Why not like 7,000 even? Secondly, that description sounds like it was written by ChatGPT.
Right. That's funny.
I feel like someone input the prompt that was like, give a description of why someone should buy a Holger Rune smashed racket.
Yeah, I know. I feel like someone put in the comments like this is totally a recession indicator.
Yeah, 100%. Someone's selling that smashed racket for $7,000.
Hey, Aiden, don't make fun of me if next week I log on, you see just a smashed racket framed behind me.
Dude, I'd just be impressed that you had $7,000 to spend on that.
Yeah, I'll just go buy a Babolat and then go out and smash it myself.
Exactly, and then just write Rune on it.
Yeah. So I guess the way economics works, supply and demand, apparently these are pretty rare, but I bet a Rublev one would only go for a couple $100 since they're so often.
100%.
How about you? What did you see this week?
Mine is about the guy that made the big performance, Bublik. He actually apparently considered quitting after Wimbledon last year, but he decided not to. And I think part of the reason is Bublik kind of plays this entertainer role, almost like a Kyrgios, but inside he still has that strong drive to be a champion. And because he wasn't succeeding, it was kind of taking the love out of the game for him. And he felt like maybe he was just going out there to impress the fans, but it all felt sort of meaningless. And so I'm glad that he's been able to lock back in and show that not only can he be an exciting player, but also a very high quality player to watch and to compete against for these top guys. So he proved that this week, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of people don't take him seriously just because he does kind of have that entertainment vibe to him. But no, he is a legitimate player. And I think he wants to start being categorized as so too. But I remember, I think I saw this story as well. I want to say he like went to Vegas because he felt burnt out and just like let it rip completely and came back and started winning matches.
Yeah, sometimes you need that release. It's like
Yeah, I know.
what Rodman did when he was on the Bulls.
Oh yeah, exactly.
How about a bet of the week? What'd you go for here?
Bet of the week. I'm going with a fun one. I am taking Bernard Tomic 175 plus 175 over Rinky Hijikata. I was honestly pretty shocked when I saw Tomic in the main draw, and I figured he must have gone in through qualies, and he did. So he beat De Jong, who's kind of a pretty good player, and then Kovacevic in the qualies, which two pretty good players, I feel like, for Tomic. I mean, I feel like he hasn't really been that relevant recently, but I think he's hot right now, and he's playing a fellow Australian. I feel like Hijikata will be kind of under more of a pressure to perform well because of Tomic's reputation in Australia. I feel like a lot of people hate him, so he's kind of got that like, all right, I need to beat him, otherwise, people are going to be pissed at me. Plus, Tomic is a more experienced grass player. I think, he's been around a lot longer, so he's
Yeah,
played
he's
on
like
grass more.
32, I think.
He's 32, exactly. And I just want to say, I want to put out a quick disclaimer. This pick is purely a vibes play. There was no real tennis analyzation that went into it, so I'm riding Tomic.
Yeah, speaking of vibes plays, I'm kind of on the same
Yeah.
train this week. I'm taking Fonseca plus 195 over Fritz. It's not my most serious bet, but I still feel like this match could go either way just because both guys really hit the crap out of the ball. And so I feel like it just may come down to who makes less unforced errors.
I can't believe he's only plus 195. I feel like against Fritz, he should be like at least plus 220 or
I mean,
something.
Fritz lost to Moutet last week, right? So that
Yeah.
that kind of takes away his favorites odds.
You know what bet is a lock this week? Fonseca Tomic parlay.
Yeah, exactly,
Ride,
exactly,
ride the vibes play. It's called the vibes
exactly.
parlay.
The vibes parlay. Yeah, but
All right.
how about match of the week?
Match of the week. I went with Draper edging past Popperin. So this one came down to the absolute wire. It was 7-5 in the third set tiebreaker. I just love this type of matchup, especially on the grass court. You got two big dudes just exchanging blows against each other, all while still being able to move across the court, like very nimble. There was a lot of like, the just high speed hitting, heavy hitting, big serving, excellent volleys, and honestly, just great grass court tennis. And really, I got to see Draper, like his ability to problem solve kind of on the fly because he came back and won after losing the first set. So always good to see that a player can bounce back. And honestly, just a big Draper fan. So that was a good matchup for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an impressive performance from Draper, just because it can probably feel pretty difficult. I can't think of the right word, almost inevitable when you're down against a big server in these matches where you're like, oh, how am I going to be able to survive this? Because they have these massive serves that are just going to keep pounding in. And yeah, so it's impressive that he was able to come back against that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we would have been talking about Popper differently if he would have beat Draper right then. I feel like we would have kind of gave him some more respect up there earlier in the
100%. Yeah. It would have been a big performance for this year.
yeah. How about you? What was your match of the week?
I went with Zverev Medvedev. We kind of talked about this match earlier, and at times the match was a bit of a serve fest. Both guys have pretty big serves, and it's a grass court, so that contributes there. So first set, pretty much all on serve, and Medvedev took it in a tight first set, but kind of dominated the breaker. And then the second set was really where it kind of got interesting, right? It was a lot more topsy turvy. They both got a break early, but even after that, they kind of seemed like they were headed to another breaker. But then the most interesting point of the match was 30 all at 5-6. Medvedev hits this great passing shot, sets up a match point, and then misses just a routine forehand long, gets another match point, but in this second one, kind of just gave Zverev rally balls until Zverev stepped into one and forced an error out of Medvedev. Got a third and couldn't convert it. And then finally, Zverev took the game on a crazy backhand pickup. It was like he just stuck his racket out and hit this beautiful passing shot. So it was I feel like demoralizing for Medvedev, and that's why Zverev went on to just dominate that second set breaker. But then Medvedev honestly came out kind of unfazed, broke it 2-1 in the third set, and then had a tough hold immediately after where Zverev forced 4 break points, but Medvedev was able to hold on and take the match. So overall, just a match with some big moments, and Medvedev came up big in those times.
Yeah, this one was great. I didn't catch it live, but I did watch the highlights, and I think it was, I don't know, I was watching maybe an 8-minute video, and when Medvedev had that match point, I think I looked and there was like still 4 minutes left in the video, so I'm like, oh, spoiler alert!
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he
When
is
I'm
not
watching a
gonna write
highlight,
this.
when I'm watching a highlight like that, I try to just click start and then just like not look at the time ever, because that's exactly what happens. Is you're like, you see the time left and you're like, oh well, I guess he doesn't win this match in 2
Yeah,
sets.
exactly. But no, that one was a great one.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.